What's up, Patreon fans? This is Joe Chambers from 1911 University coming to you this afternoon to give you another 1911 University review. This time, I am fortunate enough to have not one, but two brand new in the box 1951 Colts. Now, you know the review I did on the first one. It's a beautiful gun. I now own that gun myself personally, and this is the second one that I did the review on. Another beautiful example of a perfectly preserved, new in the box 1951 Colt. These guns are really fascinating to me because it's not every day that you get to see a gun that has been saved for 70 years, and it's a time capsule, really. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers, and then we'll talk a little bit about tolerances and differences and standards and all of those things that we deal with on these guns. If you are watching this video and you're on the Patreon page, you've probably seen the white paper that I wrote on both of these guns. So I'm not going to go through the complete white paper on the second gun. I'm going to go through the differences between the two guns, the numbers, the mathematical differences between the two guns, so that you can see how close the tolerances line up on these guns. So welcome to 1911 University. Remember, math don't lie. 3.14 is always pi. Let's get into it. Again, these are two basically mirror image Colts that were built in 1941. They are only a couple hundred serial number. Matter of fact, they're less than 200 serial number apart from each other, which is really fascinating. I'm sorry, less than 2,000 serial number apart from each other, which is really fascinating. During 1951, you know, Colt, they made 5,479 of these pistols. That was it. This was, you know, shortly after World War II. There were a lot of craftsmen still working for Colt that were working for the factory in 1940s building guns for the military. The MSRP on a 1951 Colt at that time was a whopping $49.95, which is amazing, because that is an equivalent of $531.41 in 2021. So the value at the time, in comparison to what we have today for $531, was astonishing. It was a wonderful value of a pistol. You got a solid performer made of bar stock and forged parts. There was no MIM back then. There were no cast parts back then. These parts were fit to an incredible level of tolerance for their time, given the machinery and the equipment that they had. As we look through the measurements, what we see is that between the two guns themselves, there was only a difference in the bushings of a half thousandths in the bushing to barrel measurements between the two guns. There was only a difference of 0.3 of a thousandths between the bushings and the slides. So they were very close tolerances on the front ends. That's not to say they were tight toleranced. All right, they were around 3.5 thousandths each for the tolerance to the barrel to the bushing, around 3 thousandths tolerance each to the bushing to the slide. But when you compare some of the other guns that we've reviewed here on 1911 University, you'll see that that is the same or better tolerances that guns that cost, you know, $5,000, $6,000 today. The bushings don't move fore and aft on either gun, which is encouraging. Now, one major difference I did note between the two guns is, in the first example I reviewed, it had a hood to breech face gap of 1 thousandths. In the second sample that I reviewed, it had a breech face gap of 11 thousandths. This shows that there was some tolerance differences in the manufacturing process. But when you go to chamber depth and hood length on the barrels, they were both almost identical. There was a half thousandths difference in the chamber depth, which could easily be my measuring technique, the tools I'm using. I'm using a depth mic, a Mitutoyo depth mic, so you could easily fudge a half thousandths one way or another there. But the hood lengths between the two barrels were almost identical. Slide pin hole in the frame was within a half thousandths between the two different frames. The slide stop pin diameter was exactly the same between both guns. The extractor length was only 5 thousandths difference between the two guns. There was 0 fore and aft movement in the extractor and the slide on either gun. The ejector length was the same. It was 960 on both guns. So as you can see, as we go through this stuff, a lot of these measurements line up. A lot of them are the same. The slide stop hole in the link was the same on both guns at 205. A little bit of variation in the barrel leg height. The second gun measured 85, the first gun measured 88, so there's a 3 thousandths difference. But then you notice they correlate that with the link. The second gun had a 94 thousandths link to go with the 85 thousandths legs, so a 9 thousandths difference. And the first one had 88 legs and a 98 link, so a 10 thousandths difference. Both guns are link riders. There's no difference at all in that regards. The slide weighs, the slide to frame fits, there is some differences in the tolerances between them. You know, but at the end of the day, the slide to frames are fit very similarly, even though there are differences in the overall tolerances. They both have the same basic tolerance range of about 7 to 9 side to side, 7 to 9 thousandths side to side, and about a total of 10 up and down, which again, if you look at modern guns that are available out there today for the $4,000 to $6,000 range, many guns that we've measured so far fall into these same tolerances. And this is a gun that was built in 1951. Vertical impact surface on these guns, both was exactly the same. It was at 335 rather, which is right into tolerance. The barrels were slightly different again, but that's okay because they have a tolerance range that they can hit, that they have to hit in order to make the guns run. Trigger parts is where it gets interesting. To me, the similarities. I had made a mistake on the white paper on the first gun. I put down that the disconnector was 1.031 and it wasn't. That's a mistake. I typed it in wrong. It's 1.301. The disconnector on the second gun is 1.298, so you only have a 3 thousandths difference there. The sears are within a thousandths of being the same. The hammer hooks are exactly the same. And of course the frame ramps, they're all the same on these guns because they were all cut on the same machine. So what we have here is two guns that were built 70 years ago. They were built in the same year, and the tolerance difference between the parts is so little that I could literally swap most of the components from one gun to another, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference in form, function, or feature on either gun. And these two guns are arguably built better than many of the guns that we see today from production, semi-production, semi-custom, and even custom builders. Those of you who have followed me on Patreon for a while now have seen some of the videos and reviews that I've put up, and you can attest to the fact that, yes indeed, the tolerances on these guns are, quite honestly, not anything different than what we see today on most of the guns that I've reviewed. You know, 8 to 10 thousandths up and down in the slide to frame fit. Okay, no barrel fit. Okay, no bushing fit. All right, standard trigger jobs with drop-in parts. Okay, fair enough. So why do we continue to buy these guns that aren't built any better than a 1951 Colt, that have cheaper made parts, that don't last as long? I don't have an answer for that. But I could tell you that from a builder's perspective, I find that pretty unacceptable, which is why here at Chambers Custom, I have a very high standard of guns that the tolerances that the guns are built by. One example is Earlier this week, one of my guys fit up a gun. Gun was going great. He gave me the gun to measure the bushing fit on. After he had finished it all up, he thought it was done. I measured the barrel, I measured the ID of the bushing, and it should have been a 0.5 thousandths tolerance. It wasn't. It was 3/4 of a thousandths. Now a lot of shops would have blown that off, pushed it down the road, and said, yep, good enough. But I didn't. I made him fit a new bushing. Now the bushing's at the correct tolerance of a 0.5 thousandths, and all is right in our world here. I think personally that what it boils down to is a lot of companies are chasing a bottom line. They're trying to meet the demands of customers while at the same time trying to meet a bottom line that they see as the necessity to continue on in business. And it's escaped a lot of companies that quality trumps quantity every day of the week. If you're going to charge a premium for a product, you should provide a premium product. If you're not going to provide a premium product, then maybe you should lower your prices. That only seems fair to me. In the case of these two Colts, I would gladly pay 5, 10 times the price, easily 5 times the price that they're valued at according to inflation for one of these guns, over buying a semi-custom today at $5,000 that has the same or less fit and lesser quality parts. But that's just me. That's how I think about things. I look at these guns and I think these are works of art. They're masterful. These two guns were built by men who actually really truly cared about the product they were creating, not just the check or the dollar amount that they were getting at the end of the project. And that's the same way I look at building guns here at Chambers Custom is, I value, yes, I need to get paid, that's important to me, but I also value the product that we're producing more than the cost of the product. So just some thoughts to think about, before you go buy your next custom gun. This has been a great opportunity to look at both of these 70-year-old pistols, new in the box. It's been a wonderful opportunity to check them out, measure them, and see the truth behind the numbers. Because as I always say, math don't lie. 3.14 is always pi. This is Joe Chambers from Chambers Custom and 1911 University. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, please click subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Chambers Custom or on Patreon at 1911 University.